Welcome to part 2 of 2 of our Getting Jiggy With It series. Today we're making a dovetail jig for the table saw. Check it out. I searched the net to find tutorials and plans on how to accomplish what I'm looking to accomplish here. And several of the plans that I found required you to make two different jigs, one to cut the pins and another jig to cut the tails. However, I wanted something all-inclusive. I don't want multiple jigs, I just want one big one that can accomplish what I need it to do. And so I found that on the Rockler website, and I'll put a link to that below. And that it's all-inclusive. So it has, on one base, it has the pin jig and the tail jig. So that is just going to make my life so much easier. I took the plans and I put them into Fusion 360, as you can see here, to help me visualize this jig just a bit better, but also work on my Fusion 360 skills. I will master this software. I swear I will master this software. The jig is pretty complex, and it's due to really the angles that you have to cut to accomplish the complexity of the actual dovetail. So you have two sides here. You have the pin fence or the pin jig here where you cut your pins, and then on the other side you have your tail jig, which you have this 1.5 inch ramp where you put your stock wood on and then you run through the table saw. The tail side has an 8 degree, as you can see here. This taper is about 8 degrees, and that gets you that classic dovetail look. And the pin side, let's get over there. The pin side is actually tapered inward 8 degrees as well. So you put your stock wood against this and run it through, so when all your tails and pins are cut, they fit together nicely. Another thing I did for this project is, and it kind of goes against my stop planning, start doing, but I want to get better at providing you all the information that you need to try to do this stuff, is I put together a cut list in Illustrator. So you can accomplish all of this on one 2 foot by 4 foot by 1/2 inch piece of plywood. And you can pick up 2 by 4 plywood from your home center, any home center. It's just in the plywood aisle. So the Rockler website, though, does suggest using 3/4 inches for these ramp pieces, but we'll get to that in a second. So you have your base, which is 12 inches by 28 inches, your tail fence, which is a single piece, 2 pieces for your pin fences, braces, triangle braces, and then again, your ramp pieces. The ramps here, so in the spirit of trying to get this done with one piece of 1/2 inch plywood, you would need to cut 6 2 by 14 inch ramps. You're going to glue 3 of them together to get that 1.5 inch base that the jig requires. You can also do this with 2 pieces of 3/4 inch plywood glued together to get that same 1.5 inch base. I haven't decided which route I'm going to go just yet. It really depends on the wood that I have in my shop. The exercise here for creating these jigs not only is to create new tools for me to use, but also get rid of some of the lumber that I have in my shop to reduce waste and just put it to good use. So we have our cut list, we have our design in Fusion 360, we have some basic understanding of how this is all going to go together. Let's head down to the shop and see what happens. The first step on this jig journey is to cut all the wood. I had enough 1/2 inch plywood to cut most of the pieces. Future projects? A cross-cut sled and upgrading my blades. To cut the triangles, I set up 2 stop blocks on either side of the saw to give myself some safe distance, and then eyeballed the center line. I didn't have enough 1/2 inch plywood to do the ramps, so I actually just followed the instructions from Rockler and used 3/4 inch plywood. To get the 8 degree taper, I simply took my 2 inch by 14 inch ramp piece and drew a line from the bottom point of one side to the top point of the other side. This gives me a close enough to an 8 degree angle to accomplish the task here. I then popped the wood onto my tapering jig and ran it through the saw. Click the link to learn how to make your own tapering jig. It's really easy. After a light sanding, it's time to put it all together. long run, using 3/4 inch ply to do the ramps was probably better. To get that 1.5 inch thickness, gluing 3 boards together is a lot more risky than gluing 2 together. The rest of the assembly is pretty straightforward. I'll leave a link to a layout diagram below. At this point, it's just gluing, and in some instances, nailing everything together. I just eyeballed the location of the triangle braces. I needed to account for the opposite side braces, as well as where my curve cuts would land. You'd think I'd be a little bit more methodical about measuring that out, but I like to guess once in a while. It keeps things spicy. The ends of the pin fence pieces were cut at 8 degrees on the table saw, to match the 8-degree pitch of the tail fence on the other side. To make the miter bar, I used a piece of 1x4 that I had laying around. The 1x4 is actually 3/4 inches by 3.5 inches, so it fits perfectly into the miter slot, with very little wiggle. I just used a few screws to hold the miter bar on, just in case I want to swap it out later. To identify where the blade will meet the wood, I ran the empty jig through on all 4 sides to get registration marks. This will help out when I put my stock wood on to cut the tails and pins. Another important safety tip is to add some 2x4x4 blocks to the blade exits. This will keep you safe as you're running wood through the jig, as it covers the blade. I had some 1x4 pine lying around, so I decided to use that for my test. I started with the pin board, finding center and then drawing 2 1-inch tails to cut out, leaving the pins behind. Also, the height should be the thickness of your tail board, not some arbitrary height. Learn from my mistakes. To get my blade height correct, I used a scrap of 1/2 inch plywood left over from my base. I put my 1x4 on top and then raised my blade to the line. Here goes nothing. Now note that you shouldn't cut on the line, cut close to the line. This makes joining the boards later on easier, allowing you to get a closer fit with the chisels. Once I got as far as I could on the left side, I moved everything to the right and repeated until all the wood I needed to remove was gone. Time for the tails. To mark those out, you just place the pin board onto the tail board and with a sharp pencil, trace the pins. Then mark them out on the board so you know which ones to cut out on the jig. Oh, and again, the thickness should be the thickness of the board. Cutting these out is pretty much the same as before, except you're doing it at an angle. The same rules apply though. Don't cut on the line, just proud of the line. When you go as far as you can, switch to the other side. Okay, now's the moment of truth. Let's try to put these together. And so we're a little... So here's the first problem. Because I'm not using a flat top blade, I have these nasty ridges here, which are going to make life a problem for me. So let me try to file those down first. You know, you'll also see here where I got a little rambunctious running this through on the opposite side, and it cut off the pin a little bit. So I'm going to have uneven pins. Just something to look out for when you're running these through. Okay. So there we go. Okay. That looks awful. So that's the dovetail jig, and I have to say I'm pretty disappointed with how this came out. The cuts are uneven and ragged, and I think there are a few things that I can do to make this better in the future. First, I'd replace the wooden miter bar on my sled with something a little bit more durable and a little bit more glide friendly, maybe something metal or even plastic. There were several instances where I struggled to get the jig through on the blade, and I think that caused a lot of the uneven cuts that I have here right now. The second thing I do is invest in a better blade, particularly a flat top blade. This will get rid of the ridges left behind on the current finished blade. And I think that'll just get you a smoother cut to get these to get in closer. So that's that. If you are so inspired to create your own dovetail jig based off of what you've seen in this video, please let me know about it. If you've made one previously based off of someone else's video or someone else's plans, let me know. I'd love to hear how it fared for you. And if you have suggestions on how I can improve this in the future, please let me know about it in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you can be in the know when I release videos, which happens about every 2 weeks right now. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stop planning and start making, as crappy as it might be. Thanks.